I actually don't think there's going to be anything new. If we think back when Governor Plenty ran for governor, he was the majority leader in the House of Representatives, and Roger Moe was the majority leader in the Senate who ran against him. And the one other person we keep forgetting to talk about who might be thinking about running for higher office is our current governor, and that's going to have the same impact as legislators running for governor or secretary of state or whatever else. That's just a matter of business. But in politics, most politicians are most worried about their own election than somebody else's election. And so you're going to have 201 legislators worried about their own election before anybody else's. Same with the governor, same with everybody else.
Well, I will tell you there are a number of lobbyists out there going, oh, this is going to be tough. So just from that side of the equation, I can tell you there's a lot of thought there. Let's quick talk about the bonding bill, because to your point, this is not a budget session. This is a bonding bill session, and there has always been a lot of talk historically about, where's the cap on what we can set forward on bonding, and some say that's absolute to keeping our record, the state, or our rating. Others say, that's kind of a made-up number. We don't know where it came from. So, let's start, Representative Surdich. What do you think? Where's that? Where do you see the bonding number falling within? And do you think we have a hard cap?
I know we don't have a hard cap because I know it's a guide. We have a set of guidelines and about 5 or 6 guidelines in what we borrow. And we're actually for states that borrow for infrastructure. We are on the lower end of states that actually, as a percentage, borrow for infrastructure. This guideline about a 3% debt limit actually came from Governor Rudy Perpich, and I only know this because there's a bunch of legislators from northern Minnesota still around who remember the story. He was putting together a bonding bill back in the 80s and met with some guy in New York and said, what do you think this should be? And he said, around 3%. And that was back in the early 80s, and we haven't looked at it since. It's like it's written on a tablet now that came down from a mountain. And that's not the only actual guideline. Like I said, there are 5 of them. The most important guideline that these body agencies look at is the stability of your state budget. And so we should be, if we're most concerned about what our limit is in borrowing, we should be most concerned about solving our state budget in the long term. Looking for a number, historically, and if you take the Democrats or Republicans off of this, I can look back to right when Kirk got into office. We had rough economic times, and you guys were in charge, Speaker Swigum, and I think Dan Dorman was the chair of the committee. Governor Plenty.
No, Phil Krinke was.
Oh, okay. That's actually going to help my story more.
Yeah. Believe me, I was on the committee.
Okay.
Welcome to the legislature, freshmen. Here's what you can do.
Yes. Back then, you guys were in charge. Governor was in charge. We had 880. We had $930 million bonding bills that were signed by the governor in rough economic times. No vetoes. 0 vetoes. Now that Democrats got in charge, and even when the economy wasn't so bad, then we started getting more politicizing the bonding bill with pork spending and all of that. And since Democrats, and we're talking about years that you were sitting on the committee, $800 million, almost $1 billion bonding bills passed, signed into law by this governor. Since Democrats came in charge and the governor started vetoing these projects, in 3 years, we've spent invested about $1 billion in a bonding bill.
It's been higher than that.
It's $1 billion to. Show you right here. I bring the numbers. So right there, 2005, 885.
So 2 of those are one of those being bonding years. You said the 3 years. So one or 2 of those years.
I'm adding all 3 years up together because we always do a smaller bonding bill in a budget year just to kind of clean up emergency projects. So for 3 years total, we matched around the years when you guys were in charge. And I'm talking about back-to-back years when you guys were in charge, year after year. 1 year, almost $900 million, and the next year, $950 million. So that's one after the other. So I think that's an appropriate number. And the reason I think so is because our legislative committees have traveled the state. And if you just invest alone in our higher education institutions, in wastewater infrastructure, and roads and bridges, you can get pretty close to that number already. And the debt service for this that we'll have to pay for next year, the debt service is $2.5 million. And to create about 10,000 construction jobs in the short term, and then have those business parks and those folks going to those colleges, that's immeasurable, that investment of $2.5 million of debt service, to have those great projects, those short-term construction projects, and those construction workers are going to buy groceries and products and services all of our communities. And then the long-term investment it leaves in our roads and bridges, I think that $2.5 million of debt service is a worthwhile investment.
Representative Zellers, has your caucus thought about a number that you think?
No, I don't. And Tony, to be clear, on the 2005 year, we weren't. I wasn't on the committee then because Chair Krinky didn't put out a bonding bill. That's the kind of the misnomers that we have to have a bonding bill every year. We have not usually traditionally the even-numbered year. It's surprising, isn't it, that politicians pass out goodies in the year they're going to run for re-election. We don't usually have a bonding bill every year. It's every other year. And what we've seen, and again, you can kick the governor about what the number is, but we had to buy a lot of Iron Range votes with some of those bonding bills, so we actually had to hit votes to pass the bonding bill, get to that 90 number. So there was a lot of projects in there that were bipartisan. Now there's also been a lot of projects in there that maybe don't meet the kind of what I'd call the sniff test. If it's infrastructure, that's what Tony and I do agree. It should be roads and bridges and infrastructure, something that's going to make our community safe, get people back to work. But this idea that this is a jobs bill, the 10,000 number, the 15,000 number, we've heard these numbers before, but there's no way to calculate, and I think that's probably part of the shell game with the bonding bill, is there's no way to calculate how many of those jobs have actually happened, have been sustained, have been maintained, because we've asked how many of them have come back, and a lot of the folks that say, well, technically we were part-time workers, so it's almost as if with the federal government now we're saving jobs, not just adding jobs, but we're saving jobs. And when the government gets into that calculation, that's how we ended up with the 93rd congressional district here in Minnesota, I think. We had districts that didn't really exist that showed up in states where the stimulus money went out. I'm not going to say that our state bonding bill is just like the porculus bill that came out of Washington, because that's not fair. There are good people here who put together good projects, who've done a phenomenal job, not only pleading their case, but bringing their project for the bonding bill down to just the brass tacks, what they really, really need to make their community safe. So I'm not going to compare them to, the bridge to nowhere and those political shots. There's some real good things there. But we're also in uncertain economic times. To spend a whole bunch of money now, not knowing what we're going to be. Now, Tony's got a real reasonable number, actually, because the two chairs of the bonding committees have been talking about north of $1 billion. I think $1.5 billion was one of the numbers we heard. Now, I'm all for infrastructure and actually funding the things that are important, but if we start overextending ourselves, whether it's 3 or 4%, we know what economic times we're in. These are perilous times. We overextend ourselves now, we're going to be awfully sad-faced if we have to cancel some of these bonds for these projects in the next 2 years. I hope we don't have to. But if we really want a real live jobs bill, there's an opportunity out there to put a lot of, and you can go back and report to the union guys, these are good union jobs. If we want to put those guys back to work, men and women, it's lift the moratorium on the nuclear ban. Those are IBEW workers that will be back to work for not just days, but for months and years working on some of this expansion.
All right,
that's their jobs bill.
I'm sorry, Kurt.
Oh, sorry.
I want to be respectful of time, and I know you have daycare duties, so you're the one who told me.
I have a
So I
preschooler.
do have a quick question, and then maybe we have room for one question. I'll give it to you, okay? But first, I want to finish. So you two, you've mentioned this, but you will be meeting this afternoon with the governor. 2 o'clock, I believe, is the meeting. So the question I have is, what do you hope to hear from the governor? You're just confirming it. I just made that up. So you're
Yeah, we're looking for the time. Maybe he's going in at 2. I don't get to go in until 2:30. So.
That's the only advantage we have. I mean,
So, sorry about that. So let me start. So, Kurt, what do you hope to hear from the governor today?
Well, I mean, honestly, just the fact that we're having the meeting. In the past, we've waited until, you all who've been down to the Capitol watch this. It starts in the end of April, first part of May. So having the meeting this early on and discussing some of these issues, I think that's the best part. And I'm going to go in with an open mind. Again, jobs and economic opportunity, helping get the economy going here in Minnesota so we can lead the way back into the recovery. Those are the two things I'm looking for, besides just being happy that we're starting now.